now let's get into your beginnings a little bit before we get into the road. What drew you to music?
So I started DJing in 1980. I was just moved to Long Island. I was living in Elmont. I was in the park, and they had this park jam there. This kid, DJ Squiggy, he was DJing, and I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I was already doing graffiti. You know what I mean? I was bombing.
So you had an artistic part to you. It was just kind of misplaced.
I was already doing graffiti. That's how I got the name Skribble.
Right.
You know, so I was bombing the J trains. I was bombing the J's, the N's.
Just so you know, the statute of limitations has run out.
Yeah, it's totally run out.
Yeah,
I did. But the 2s, the 5s, and that's how I was very into hip hop, and I started DJing. I would go to his house until I could afford my own turntables, and then I literally just started practicing every day. And I was 14 years old. I told my parents I was going to my friend's house. I jumped on the train, went up to the Bronx River Projects by myself at that time. Little white boy. And I walked out, and back then Zulu Nation and everything, they had the security over there, and he's like, yo, white boy, are you lost? And I'm like, no, I want to meet Africa Bambaataa. They're like, what? So that's how I ended up meeting Grand Wizard Theodore, Africa Bambaataa, Cold Crush Brothers, and they took a liking to me, and they saw my skills, and that's how I started to become part of the industry. And then in 1986, 87, is when I got into the Young Black Teenagers. None of us were black.
No.
And we were produced by Hank Shockley and Public Enemy. And instead of going into the Air Force, because that's what I was originally going to do, because my whole family was military. My father was, Air Force.
Was that a tough decision? Was your family okay with it?
My father, he was okay. My father was also a doo-wop singer. That's kind of how I got. My father was in the Ovations and the Velvetones. That's kind of how I got into music, really. And but he didn't understand hip hop. He didn't understand my lifestyle.
I still don't.
Old school Guinea, you know what I mean? Like old school Italian guy. Like he didn't get it. But when I got out of that, the first thing I did, I was on my first world tour in 1988 with Public Enemy and EPMD with the Teenagers. And we didn't even have our first album out, and we were doing all our album off of breakbeats. The first time we went out there was in the Docklands Arena, our first show, and they announced the Young Black Teenagers, and they saw 5 white guys come out, and they were like, boo! They started throwing stuff at us. I got hit with a pair of sunglasses. I kept DJing. By the time we got to Germany, people started to see what we were about and know we could get down. And then we put out the first album, and then the second album, which we had the hit record, Tap the Bottle and Twist the Cap.
Right.
So that took me around the world.
I remember that.
For a while. And then I was with Dr. Dre, East Coast Dr. Dre, with Dr. Dre and Ed Lover. And I started rolling with him. And then I started doing episodes of MTV Raps with them. And then I got on Hot 97 on the morning show. So that's really when I left the Teenagers, and that's really what.
That's when you kind of got in
locally. You know what I mean? And then I was in the Rocksteady crew. I was a Rocksteady crew DJ, and then I did my first off-Broadway play in '94 at the Minute Lane Theater called Jam on the Groove. And then I did my first Broadway play with Bill Irwin at the New Victory Theater when they cleaned up 42nd Street. So it was like this whirlwind of what am I going to do? But like at that time too, when I left the group, I was homeless, literally homeless. I was sleeping.
It's always betting on yourself is always a tough call because you're willing to risk what you have.
Yes.
Because you could have stayed in the group, get your check, and then
because we were getting screwed royally. Like when I found out how much we really got for our advance and what they did to us and what we actually got, we were that typical cliche rap group back then, like Third Base said, a box of Newports and Puma sweats. Like that was it. So when I got tired of that, I left the group. I had nowhere to go. I was sleeping on Dr. Dre's couch. Then I took a small job at Big Beat Records, and I was sleeping on Craig Coleman's couch, who's now the chairman of Atlantic Records, and I was running around with the Artifacts doing stuff with them. But my big break, like locally, was Stretch Armstrong was the New Music Seminar. Stretch Armstrong got sick. The show was at Chippendales. And this is like when the night the industry like realized what I do.
Right.
And they're like, yo, Skribble, you got your records with me? I'm like, yeah, they're in my car because that's where I kind of live.
Yeah.
So I ended up doing the show and then just ripped the place down. I tore the place apart. And that's when like the actual music industry saw something in me and it started to develop. And then, like I said, I got on Hot 97, started the traffic jams on the morning show with Dr. Dre and Ed Lover. And then from there I went to MTV, and then that's because I was doing those little parts with, on Yo MTV Raps. I did the final episode of Yo, which, 30 years later, I produced the Yo MTV Raps 30th anniversary at the Barclays Center. That was my show with Charlie Stetler. And it was one of the greatest achievements in hip hop that I've ever achieved. Like, we gave back to MTV, like, let me do what I wanted to do. I always give props to them for that, because they had really nothing to do with that show.
Well, how are they going to tell you how to create?
That was the thing. They were trying to, and then Bruce Gilmer, he was like, leave him alone. Like, and we did that show. I know I'm all over the place because I don't know how much time we have.
I'm always saying, leave me alone. Just let me do my thing.
Well, that was it. You know, we were getting calls from MTV. Well, the lower third cry on color as well. And then they were just like, leave him alone. I did that show and created that show with a good friend of mine, DJ Crush out of Louisiana, and 2 interns from 5 towns. You know, and it was like, nobody could believe we pulled what we pulled off. You know, and it was incredible. But like, my career, you know, with MTV, it was the catalyst to brought me to international, which got me to DJ in 60 countries, which, you know, there was so many things that I had first of doing that be called, you know, before AM, before all this, being considered the first celebrity DJ.
Well, you know, it's a lot to unpack there, but
yeah, I don't know how much time. I'm all over the place right now.
No, we're good. We're on my time. The biggest thing is, like, when I hear you say longevity, because every name that you mentioned isn't around anymore. And some of them were big names, you know, and I find it like, it's, especially the music industry, because it's changed so much. I don't necessarily feel for the better. I feel like the artist has just been choked out.
Well, there's no more artist development. That's gone away a long time ago. You know, now everything is not based on talent. It's based on how many followers you are. Yeah. Your marketing. You know, you have to now, as an artist, wear many hats, which where a label used to do all that for you. But now you don't even need the label, because with the digital age that we're in and the internet, one click, you're global. Right. You hit enter once you post that record on SoundCloud, whatever you're going to do, YouTube, whatever, TikTok, whatever you're going to do, and you could blow up. And you don't need these big labels anymore. That's a fact.
But I have noticed, especially a lot of independent artists. When I think of like one of the greatest independent artists, I think of Ice Cube. Guy was. I'm still amazed by the fact that how young he was to not sign with Heller and them in the NWA.
I was in the studio with the Bomb Squad, with Hank and Keith and them, when Ice Cube did America's Most Wanted. We're actually on some of those records in the background.
That's my favorite album of all time.
Yeah,
I rocked that.
We were
in
in
my
Green
first
Street
car.
Studio every night with that album.
Yep, I was terrified of the Okie Doke. But to know, hey, I'm not going to sign, you know, at that age, because most of us, you're a perfect example. You're on a couch, they offer you a job. My first contract signing, I didn't even read it. I was just, I'm in.
We were the same,
I'll figure it out. I'll figure it out later.
Of course.
Like, whatever. I'll just make it work. I'll make it work.
You just wanted to be on.
Yeah. You know, and to, when you see like a young guy who's like, nope, I'm keeping my intellectual property. I'm keeping my publishing.
Of course.
Keeping all those things.
Of course.
And he continued. I think he's one of the greatest lyricists of all time.
Ice Cube's nasty.
And then
still is.
Yeah, still is. I just got his new album. But the control is still with the industry, because they're like, you're not going to get Emmys. You know, we get those. Not Emmys. You're not going to get
Grammy.
Like Grammy. I remember when I was bodyguarding Snoop, we went to the Grammys, and they had him there all day to trick him,
right?
To think that he was going to get a Grammy,
right? And
the rap Grammy was given away off camera, like in the afternoon. So we're sitting out there and we're like, well, here's the main thing. Like, Coldplay came out and he looked at me and he looked at his wife and he was like, man, they just wanted me here for the ratings. They're like, we out. Yep. And we left. But it's like the artists, they work, and it's in wrestling, it's in acting. They try to make to where the artist is so replaceable that they'll never have to deal with another Prince again. They'll never have to deal with a guy that can...
It's disposable music, too.
Yes.
The music, like, and I'm not taking anything away from new hip-hop, but tell me a record that's come out in the last 10 years that's going to be around in 10 years.
I can honestly tell you...
Give me one. Give me one.
As you get older, you evolve, right? Because the stuff that we cared about when we were younger, you wanted to get a girl, you wanted to have a nice car and a chain. Like that was, and some money in your pocket.
Right.
But then you get older, you have kids and stuff, that's not really on top of the thing. Right. So when you listen to stuff, you either want to hear a good reminisce or you want to hear something that's current or whatever. I think a lot of times it's just like boxing, where a rapper, when he's hungry and broke, he's just spitting. And then he gets successful and he got nothing to rage about anymore. So then you got to be an artist.
Yes.
You got to be able to create.
But, Jazzy Jeff said it best. When you become successful, that's when the real work begins.
Right.
Because to maintain that, everybody pushes you up, as you know. You're in an industry. You were in an industry and still are they push you. But when you get to a certain plateau, then that next level is coming to try to take you down.
Yeah, and there's always for every time you're going up, there's at least 10 people around you,
without a doubt,
trying to knock you off the
without
thing,
a doubt,
you know, with a smile on their face.
And then you become a circus trick because you're only as good as your last act. Nobody cares about what you did yesterday. It's what are you doing today?
Yeah, you have to be better. I always say, whenever people ask me like, what is your goal? Whenever you go out on TV or stand up or wrestle, I have to be better than the last time I was out. That's the only way you can maintain.
Mm-hmm. And that puts a lot of stress on you too, because it's like
it's stress in every aspect of your life,
without a doubt. Because like everything you do, because as you said, we got older, we have kids who have all these other activities that we got to maintain that cost money. Then you got college, so you got to, as you get older, and you're not that young guy anymore that was at the top.
That's hungry and will stay up till 4 days and 4 nights.
I'm still hungry. I'll still do that, but it's a different world because your audience gets older and they move on.